The reason you feel suffocated in your relationship as this Eden loop pattern is repeating is because you don't have the language or the context or the awareness of what is actually happening on a spiritual, emotional, and energetic level. But now you do. Do you know in your bones that you're meant for a life that feels free and expansive? Are you ready for a conscious relationship that honors every facet of who you are as a woman, partner, mama, professional, and everything in between? If so, you're in the right place. I'm Kaya Dawn, a conscious relationship and shadow work guide who helps high achieving, spiritual minded women trust their body's wisdom and create partnerships where they feel just as supported as they are supportive. Lace up those sneakers, babe, and let's go on a hot girl walk together to dish about what it means to be the woman behind it all. Hello, my love, and welcome back to the final episode of our relationship physics series. I'm so excited. If you've been following along, you now understand that your relationship operates on 3 different energetic channels and that your energy is transmitting from your body and from your cells and from your aura before your words even land. And so today we're going to be diving into the most powerful piece, the law of energetic evocation. And essentially, the keyword here is evoke. And something that's going to change the way that you perceive your relationship and yourself in it, and ideally take responsibility for your role in the relationship, is that you are always evoking something from your partner. Every moment, your energy is pulling a specific response from their system. And if you remember from our previous episode, we talked about how all of the cells in your body and nervous system are doing 2 things at all times. They are listening and responding. And so, whenever you can be aware of that is what's happening on both you and your partner's deepest levels, then it can really support you in creating more of the depth and the harmony and the connection that you want in your relationship. And so, when it comes down to this aspect of evoking things, the question isn't whether you're evoking something or not, because you already know that you absolutely are. The question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. When you're doing it unconsciously, or you're unconscious about what you're evoking, I should say, you can tend to get stuck in the same frustrating cycles in your relationship. But whenever you understand how to consciously evoke what you want, that's whenever you can become the kind of woman who doesn't just hope for better responses in your relationship, but you can actually create the conditions for that deeper connection that you desire. And so today we're going to be talking about how to shift from accidentally triggering the responses that you don't want in your partner to consciously evoking the responses that create more of that love, intimacy, and magic that you're truly desiring. And so this is where relationship physics gets even more practical. So let's dive in. If you're already starting to connect the dots and see how this aspect of relationship physics and evoking responses in your relationship applies to you, and you want to get more specific about your own patterns, I have something really powerful for you that I'd like to share. I've created a free 3-channel relationship assessment that helps you diagnose exactly which energetic channels are creating disconnection in your relationship. And so instead of guessing why things feel off, this assessment can help you identify where maybe you're emotionally out of sync, sexually polarized, or mismatched in ways that you don't really want, or spiritually incompatible. And you'll get a personalized score for each of these channels and specific steps for those areas that need attention. And this isn't about pointing fingers or judging you or your partner. It's about awareness, right? All of this work is awareness. And I created this because most couples waste years trying to fix everything through better communication without understanding they might be perfectly aligned emotionally and can have great conversations, but feel completely flat sexually. Or maybe you're feeling deeply connected spiritually, but chaotic emotionally, right? There's not a lot of consistency there. And when you know which specific channel needs work or attention or love and, you know, your awareness on it, you can actually address the real issue instead of just hoping things get better. And this assessment has helped me in my relationship and other women that I've shared it with to go from feeling confused about the relationship dynamics to having a clearer roadmap for creating that deeper intimacy that we all crave, and also that authentic connection and conscious love that expands you and is life giving versus depleting and draining you. And so that assessment is linked in the show notes. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes, and it will give you immediate clarity on where to focus your attention in your relationship. So be sure to grab that. So let's go ahead and hop in here into this aspect of the law of energetic evocation and kind of the core concept of it. And so within every interaction in your relationship, your energetic state is literally calling forth a response from your partner's nervous system because of the aspect of all of the cells in our bodies are constantly doing two things. They are listening and responding. And it's kind of like Newton's law of physics, to where every action creates an equal and opposite reaction. And so in relationships, your energetic action creates an energetic reaction, right? And not only that, it's felt on the deeper spiritual and emotional planes as well. And so, whenever you're both bringing the same energy, like maybe you're both stressed out or angry or feeling shut down, you create this energetic repulsion or potentially just neutrality, right? There's no magnetic pull, there's no juice, there's no attraction there. But whenever you understand how to consciously choose your energetic state, you can evoke what your relationship actually needs in that moment. And instead of being a victim of unconscious patterns, you can become the conscious creator of your reality and the dynamic between you two, which is what we want, right? And so this doesn't mean that you're responsible for managing your partner's emotions, because you can't do that. But it does mean that you can take responsibility for what you're contributing to the energetic field and making conscious choices about what you want to evoke from your partner, from your relationship. And I would love to bring in the gene keys in this aspect. And specifically, we're going to be talking about the IQ and the EQ sphere, because between these two spheres in the golden path, there is what's known as the pathway of defense and also the pathway of intelligence, because this has to do with intellectual intelligence, because the IQ sphere has to do with your intellectual quotient, and it's imprinted during the third phase of development of ages 21 to 14, while the EQ has to do with the emotional quotient, and this is for the second 7-year stage in development, from ages about 7 or 8 to 14. And this aspect is really important because between these two spheres and this pathway of defense, there's something that happens which is called the Eden loop. And this is where understanding your gene keys can be so powerful. And so whenever you start to dive into this, you'll see that there's actually a deeper layer to understanding why we get stuck in these unconscious patterns in our relationships. And with the concept of the Eden loop that's brought forth in the gene keys, it perfectly explains what happens when partners keep triggering each other in lower frequencies. And so this is how it works. We all have the IQ sphere and the EQ sphere in our Gene Keys Golden Path, like I just said. And your IQ, because it's intellectual, it represents the mental defense patterns, the unconscious way that your mind protects you from perceived threats. While your EQ sphere, that emotional quotient, represents your emotional defense strategies and how you've learned to cope with pain as a child, right? And so, this Eden loop, what happens is, whenever one person's mental defense pattern, their IQ, gets triggered, it then triggers the other person's emotional defense pattern, their EQ, which then triggers back the other person's mental pattern. So it's like this biofeedback loop that's like, if you're intellectualizing stuff and you're projecting that onto your partner, they're going to get emotionally defensive, and then vice versa, right? If you're emotionally defensive, you're going to trigger the other person's intellectual defense mechanisms, right? And it's just this biofeedback loop of triggering each other's childhood wounds. And so if one partner is leading with this mental criticism or problem solving, it's this IQ defense. And so it's kind of this energy of like, here's what's wrong and here's how to fix it. And this triggers that other person's emotional defense where they feel criticized and potentially shut down or get defensive or like, I can't ever make you happy. I can never do anything right. Right. And that can lead to emotional withdrawal, which then triggers more mental intensity from that first partner of, why aren't you listening to me? Why don't you see me? This is important. And round you'll go. And like, raise your hand, right? Give me a hallelujah if this is resonating, because we've all experienced this, right? And what's happening are both people are unconsciously evoking the other's deepest defense patterns instead of their love. And another reversed example would be that one partner comes home in an emotionally flooded EQ kind of energy and emotionally dumps their stress on their partner. And this can potentially trigger the partner's IQ defense, right? To where they go into that problem solving mode or mentally checking out to protect themselves because of the emotional dumping. And then the emotional partner can feel unheard and can get more activated, which makes the mental partner withdraw even more. And so I hope you can see through these different examples that there's this stuckness in the Eden loop where emotional intensity can evoke mental withdrawal, which evokes more emotional intensity, right? Are you seeing it? And whenever you look at those IQ and EQ spheres and you can see what gene keys that you have activated in those specific spheres, you can see the shadow patterns that are at play in your relationship. And the gene keys are an awareness system. It's not a religion, it's not a dogma, it's not anything but a awareness system to help you create more depth and safety and connection and harmony in your relationship, because these two spheres are within the Venus sequence. And the Venus sequence is all about one-to-one relationships, childhood wounding, right? Like the childhood patterns that are coming up from ages 7 to 21 within these two spheres specifically, because they go over the second and third stage of development, those 7-year cycles. And they can just really help you to start to take responsibility for them and to be able to extend understanding, compassion, and forgiveness to both you and your partner. Because whenever you start to recognize these patterns coming up in your relationship, and the more that you can start to catch them showing up, it lets you breathe a little bit, because the reason you feel suffocated in your relationship as this Eden loop pattern is repeating is because you don't have the language or the context or the awareness of what is actually happening on a spiritual, emotional, and energetic level. But now you do. And so then you can share this awareness with your partner potentially if you want to. You don't have to. It only takes one of you to do this work in a relationship to, one, break the pattern, and two, shift the energetic dynamic of your relationship from the inside out. And so I just really want to empower you with this information because it can be so transformative in your relationship. I wish I had known this whenever I was in my 13-year relationship with my ex, because it would have made a lot more sense. It also would have made a lot more sense to understand that he was a 6'3" emotional manifesting generator, and so he's got a lot of energetics that totally makes sense now that I know about it. But before, I had no idea. And it would have been able to help us have a more harmonic relationship than it was. And who knows, it maybe could have saved our relationship. I don't really know. In a way, I'm glad that it didn't, because I'm obsessed with my fiance, but it can do that. It has the opportunity to do that when you know this information about the gene keys and your different spheres and the Eden loop and so much more that the system provides. It can be a relationship changer. And I truly believe that with my entire heart and body. In addition to also understanding the human design aspects, it's just such powerful information that I think everyone needs to know. And so, if you haven't already, I want to invite you to pull your Gene Keys profile and look at the IQ sphere and the EQ sphere and what gene keys are activated there, not only for yourself, but for your partner, so that you can start to see what the shadow patterns are that tend to show up and trigger each other unconsciously, and also the higher gifts and expressions that you two are meant to live into, so that it doesn't have to be this unconscious thing that keeps repeating over and over. And I'm not saying that learning this information one time is going to change everything. No, it's a practice, it's an awareness, it's a continued deep dive and contemplation into these different shadow aspects. And just as a reminder, if you want to get the audio transmissions for the specific gene keys that I'm referring to, they are $2 a piece. And so you can spend, what is that, $8 to figure out what the shadows, gift, and highest expressions are that you and your partner are both meant to experience in these two spheres, and how it can make so much sense when you start to go back in time and contemplate what was going on in your life from ages 7 to 14 and then 14 to 21, and start to connect the dots. So then you can extend compassion and understanding and forgiveness and start to shift your relationship dynamic from the inside out. Because, of course, I wouldn't be telling you all of this if there wasn't a way to break this loop, right? And so, the beautiful thing about understanding this pattern is that it only takes one person to break the loop. I'm going to repeat that one more time. It only takes one person to break the loop, because the moment one person becomes conscious of what they're evoking and they choose differently, the pattern has nowhere to go. If you don't engage in the behavior, the pattern interrupts, right? And so instead of fighting fire with fire and continuing to trigger this unconscious defense pattern, you can consciously evoke the love pattern instead, or at least just stopping it altogether. And this is where relationship physics becomes conscious creation. And so let's talk about these conscious evocation strategies that can really support you in the practicality of applying this to your relationship. And so let's talk about evoking safety when there's conflict. So, like I just alluded to, instead of fighting fire with fire, you can drop into your heart. And whenever you can understand that if someone is angry, that is a secondary emotion, and there's really some sadness or hurt underneath that. And so, if you can feel the ache underneath that frustration, and you can soften into that and soften your body and let them potentially just feel your love and what you're expressing outward towards them, of maybe holding space and seeing them, or maybe even reflecting how their anger is hurting you. Instead of fighting with fire, you can depolarize them from that energy. Potentially. I can't guarantee that this will work, but there's so much happening unconsciously that it can, right? You can polarize your partner into a different energy by dropping more into whatever the moment needs. I just gave the example of dropping more into your feminine, but maybe you can drop more into your masculine, to where you just hold the emotional puke bucket for your partner to be able to get all of it out, so then they might feel free, right? And so if you're constantly, or excuse me, if you're consciously choosing to evoke their care and protection instincts instead of that fight response, you can flip that person's system naturally, so that they will want to soften into you because you softened into them as well. And this isn't about bypassing your feelings, because you might feel hurt, you might feel attacked, you might feel like this is unfair, right? It's not about suppressing that. It's about choosing which feelings to lead with for what serves that moment. It's about being in devotion to love, right? We've talked about that. It's a second stage love. It's not self focused. It's not, how dare they do this to me? I'm so hurt. And then you start to fight fire with fire, right? It's about meeting the moment with that sacred intimacy of embracing your partner for all that they are and letting them express their humanity. And of course, if there's this fundamental safety issue to where you don't feel safe, and I know that you likely have a lot of baggage that can play into it, but I want to invite you to soften into that second stage of love, of we focused, of devotion to love, of what does this moment need, of how can I hold space, how can I break this pattern in our relationship so that we can transmute it into something different and better that creates more depth and safety and harmony for both of us, right? Be the leader, be the one to go first, be the one to bring that conscious awareness to your relationship, because it can absolutely change everything for you. Okay, I want to give another example that I think is going to really hit close to home for a lot of women because this example is like, let's say that you're feeling really overwhelmed with life, work, responsibilities, kids' duties, and you're exhausted and you need support. And so instead of frantically explaining everything that's wrong, which is something that I tend to do, it's like whenever I get activated and I feel unsafe and I feel overwhelmed, I tend to rage clean and I tend to let everyone know that I am pissed off and that they need to help me clean up this house because I feel unsafe, because I hate it when our house has exploded. And I know that this is one of my shadow patterns. And I know that I evoke like dysregulation in my husband or my fiance, my husband. He's going to be my husband. I can't wait. Anyways, and also in my daughter. And so it's like, we're all in this together. Right. And so we tend to do this, right? Especially as women, we get in our feminine and we like want to explain everything that is pissing us off or frustrating us and like telling everybody like what they need to do to help us or, what they potentially did wrong. And that is okay. It is okay because we're aware of it and we're practicing it. And that's why we're listening to this podcast. And that's why I'm creating this podcast. Okay. It's all okay. It's just information. And in this moment, what we really want is to consciously evoke our masculine energy in our partner, right? Our masculine partner into their masculine energy, right? So that they can hold that space for us. And ideally, when this happens, they step up and help us and recognize that we're just in a dysregulated state and they want to help us and serve us. And so if that happens, and ideally it does, thankfully, my partner does do that. And then you get to soften, you get to be vulnerable, and you can say something like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, and I could really use your help to clean out the house or figure this out or whatever you need to ask for help about. And what you're doing whenever you do this is you're evoking their desire to support you and to solve the issue if it needs solving, right? Maybe it doesn't need solving, but it just needs their support, right? Rather than their tendency to potentially get overwhelmed by your overwhelm, right? You're polarizing your partner into their masculine and allowing them to show up for you. And this is all energetics, and energetics are subtle, and I can't guarantee results, but I promise the more that you practice it and the more that you are aware of your own patterns in your relationship and what you want to evoke from your partner, then that feminine vulnerability that you are consciously expressing out can evoke that healthy masculine response in your partner. And so, if this is all resonating with you, then there's a practice that you can integrate into your relationship to where once a month you can ask these questions for yourself, but also for your partner, right? You can do it together. It can be a really juicy practice that you do as a couple. And the questions are, what am I unconsciously evoking from my partner? Am I evoking stress, defensiveness, withdrawal, overwhelm? And what do I want to be evoking instead? Do I want to evoke connection, presence, playfulness, support, intimacy? What do I want, right? Get clear on that. And what energy would I need to embody to evoke what I actually want? And then you can share your discoveries with each other without trying to fix anything. It's just about witnessing the patterns you're both creating and starting to make more conscious choices. So, my love, that is the law of energetic evocation. And understanding that you're always pulling these responses from your partner's system and you can choose to do that consciously can be an absolute game changer in your relationship. And I hope it truly is. All right, let's bring this whole series together. You now understand that your relationship operates on three different energetic channels that need to dance together in polarity. Your nervous system is constantly broadcasting energy that transmits before your words land. And you're always evoking responses from your partner based on the energy that you embody. What frequency are you operating in most of the time or in specific scenarios? So, whenever you can increase your awareness of these things, you become the kind of woman who doesn't just hope for better communication in your relationship, you actually create the energetic conditions for the deeper intimacy that you want. You become fluent in the invisible language and relationship physics that your body and relationship have always been speaking, right? And again, this isn't about perfection or controlling every interaction. It's about awareness. It's about taking responsibility for what you're contributing to the field between you guys. It's about the conscious choices that you get to make instead of the unconscious reactions that have led the way in the past. So start small, pick one unconscious pattern that you want to shift. And instead of evoking what you don't want, consciously choose to embody the energy that evokes what you do want. Watch what happens whenever you become a conscious participant in your relationship physics instead of an unconscious victim of them. And so I hope this series has opened up a whole new way of seeing your relationship. And I want to invite you again to download that free 3-channel relationship assessment that's linked in the show notes. This is a really valuable resource that can act as a practical tool that gives you the immediate clarity on where your relationship needs attention, because I know that you feel it in your body. It's just, can you identify where it is, right? Where's the gap? So instead of feeling confused why your relationship might feel off or why you're always triggering each other, you'll have these tools in your tool belt and a clear diagnosis of a roadmap for creating that depth and intimacy and connection that you are craving and that I fully believe is your birthright. And so my intention for you with this episode is that you go from unconsciously hoping things will get better to consciously creating what you want. And if this series has been valuable to you, please share it with another woman who's ready to understand the invisible forces that either create that magnetic attraction or potential chaos in their relationships, because the world needs more people who understand how to consciously work with these dynamics instead of being unconscious victims of them. And so thank you for going on this relationship physics journey with me. I hope you've had fun exploring these concepts with me. And here's to creating more conscious, magnetic, soul nourishing love. All right, my babe, that's it for today. As always, be brave, not perfect, and I'll catch you in the next episode. I hope this episode reminded you that life and love are supposed to feel safe and expansive and gave you clarity on the next right step you can take in your relationship. If so, please take 30 seconds to leave a review. Each one helps get this content into the ears and hearts of women just like you. I'm excited to hang out again soon, having more conversations on how to create the relationships you've always dreamed of. Keep following what feels expansive, babe. You're so worthy of it all.